Now I don't know if you know, but the date 1348 is extremely significant in West European history. It's the number of the year of the bubonic plague, reputedly killed 1/3 of the population of Europe. Not clear that it was bubonic plague. It was simply called the Black Death. It was the plague anyway. Hard to say, isn't it, back then? Look, I don't want to be negative, but we have actually come here to experience death, but we loathe it. We both fear it and we loathe it and we're repelled by it, except in as far as to realize in this dilemma of being in this universe that this is exactly what we don't want for eternity. We want life eternal. In other words, yes, it's for a blessing again. My thesis is, isn't it? Well, it's not just mine. I hope I understand it's God's, but that we are here to experience both good and evil, that we may choose the good, come to identify ourselves with such with our whole being forever, that we may be a blessing in eternity, purposing no evil ever again. Very simplistic sort of view, isn't it? But very serviceable in some ways. In society terms, the Black Death was, typified, so to speak, in England, in that it made such a shortage of, this is an economic theory, me being an economist, of course, it's not my own. Let me get to the point. Made such a shortage of labour that the lords of the domain didn't question whether you were a bondman that belonged to another lord or a free man. They just turned a blind eye because they were desperate for labour to harvest the crops and farm the fields. They were just laying fallow and not enough labour to make them productive. And so the scarcity of labour gave labour a clout, a force, an independence. It was the end. It marks the end of the medieval system of bondship. You know, you were a bondman. You weren't free. You weren't free to leave your village, you see. You worked for the master on his domain so many days a week, and you were allowed to farm strips in the open field system on the other days of the week. A sort of slave, a bondman. Yeah. And the Black Death brought the collapse of that system. And through the society, it probably is reflected in the Magna Carta, which was not really anything to do with the peasants. It was the lords trying to seize power back from the king that had taken a position of power over them. It's seen as the beginning of a sort of democratic inclination, the sort of thing that was to happen for Western Europe. And when I say democratic, I mean their understanding of democracy, not a socialist understanding of democracy, which is grassroots, involvement in decision-making that affects the society. This was not that. This was Western democracy, which is an elitist view of democracy. Your citizens have the opportunity to supposedly choose their governments, and their governments then rule until the next election. And of course the corruption of it is, well, what we might see as the corruption of it, if we believe it's a valid principle, is that whichever party gets in, it's actually very similar policies, and the fundamental issues that perhaps should be changed are never addressed. They're hidden amidst a preoccupation with trivia, supposed rights and freedoms that are not fundamental perhaps to the true needs of life, care and concern for such. You see, we don't want democracy, fascism, or communism or socialism. What we actually want is loving kindness, compassion, our Heavenly Dad. The rest is all noise. Thank you, Dad.